Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are back going to investigate some noises that the Alfarrari is making and do something about some dodgy wiring. Alright guys, welcome back, and those who've been following know that this is the Alfarrari. This is my 1973 Alfa Romeo GTV 2 litre that is no longer a 2 litre, it is now a 3.6 litre Ferrari V8. A couple of weeks ago when I was working on it, I actually did a bit of suspension work and went through and replaced the springs with some slightly stiffer springs because it is much heavier than the standard car, and it was a little bit undersprung and was very, very soft. That seems to be much better, but since then I've had a vibration in the tunnel, which I did show last episode on the Frankenhauler. Basically what's happening is as soon as I put the car under load, I'm getting a vibration in the tunnel. I'm getting some sort of chatter, something's hitting the tunnel. I will get out there on the road and give you a bit of a look at what's happening with that, and we'll dive into that a little bit deeper. If you're watching from the start, this car had zero wiring, and I replaced the entire wiring loom all the way through the car, wire by wire, and built a wiring loom from scratch. The trouble is that basically when I wired up the fuse box, I didn't account for everything. I thought when I wired the car and wired the fuse box, I thought of everything, and I really didn't. And I've added to things and chopped and changed, and it's really not that great. So what we're going to do is we're going to get in there and have a look at some of this mess and see if we can make it a little bit better. All right, guys. Well, before we start tackling any of the electrical issues in the Alfarrari, I thought it would be a good time to talk about this week's sponsor, which is Jackery with their Explorer 2000 Plus, and potentially helping out if we have any electrical issues in the shed. So as you know, I am filming here most days in the shed, and I rely on having power, and if I have a blackout, then I'm really stuck, and that's where this unit can really come in handy and get me out of trouble. So the Jackery Explorer 2000 Plus solar generator has a massive 3,000 watt output, so it can easily power things like air conditioners and induction cooktops, and in my case, in the shed, it can power power tools. So this unit has a base capacity of 2,042 watt hours or 2 kilowatts, but it can be expanded up to 12 kilowatts with the Jackery Battery Pack 2000 Plus, and that can be perfect for long outages or off-grid use. This is also a reliable emergency backup. It has a seamless switchover in less than 20 millisecond UPS capability that basically ensures that any of your devices that are powered on stay powered on in a blackout. So this unit also supports up to 1,400 watts of solar input. So with 6 of the 200 watt Solar Saga solar panels, you can charge this unit up in about 2 hours. So it's got the durable long life LifePo batteries built to handle over 4,000 charge cycles and retaining over 70% of its capacity, designed to last for 10 years of everyday use. And it also has smart app control where you can access and monitor your device from anywhere. So this unit has 2 USB-A and 2 USB-C outputs, as well as 3 240 volt, 3,000 watt, 10 amp outputs, and also the 12 volt DC cigarette lighter output. It has this handy carry bag for your cables, for your AC charging, as well as cables for your car charging off of the cigarette lighter with your DC inputs. It's also easily portable with carry handles on the sides and also with a rolly handle and wheels. So head over and check out Jackery. I've put a link in the description. They've got their biggest discounts of the year and help out the companies that help out the channel. Well, that's the easy wiring out of the way. Now I need to get on to the difficult stuff, which is the Alfarrari. All right, so now I've got the Alfa up in the air and we're going to get underneath and I'll show you what's going on in there. And let's see if we can do something that might help. All right, so now looking under the car, I can't actually see anywhere where there is anything touching. There's no witness marks on any of the driveline. That's all nice and clear. There's nowhere where it is basically rubbing the paint off. What my plan is to test things out is now the diff is riding lower than it used to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to put some spacers underneath this mount for the center bearing to lower the center bearing down and see if that's it. See if it's just moving inside its own mount and whether that's what's happening, because there is a little bit of elongation in that mount, etc. So let's see if we can change that angle and see if it makes a difference.
So basically all I'm doing here is I'm unbolting the bracket that holds on the center bearing and putting a couple of nuts underneath it to space it down, but I think it can still go a little bit lower.
So my center bearing, I don't know how well you can see this on camera. There's a lot of movement in that. I mean, it is designed to move, but that is obviously where my vibration is happening. It's just rattling this around, hopefully getting this driveline a little bit straighter to the new diff angle might help me, but only way to find out is to go and give it a test. All right, not definitive. So basically it would happen sometimes. I'd get a little bit of knocking, but it does definitely feel like it's coming from that center bearing housing. But it's doing a lot less. Basically, changing that driveline angle did help quite a lot. It's obviously only doing it, sporadically, whereas before it was doing it continually. I think I need to tighten something up on that, but it's mostly working. And I don't really want to pull it apart right now. So I'm going to start tackling the wiring.
So just to clarify, my GoPro actually died there, so that is all the footage I have. But essentially, it knocked a little bit at the start, but much less than previously. And the center bearing, I think, can be spaced down further, and I think that should help out a lot of things. It probably does have something to do with the pinion angle, but that is not really adjustable, and that center bearing is, so that's what I'll tackle in the future. But for now, let's pull out the dash and start the wiring.
All right, so this is the mess that I am dealing with, and I am not happy with this at all. I laid everything out originally with the best of intentions, but basically lots of things need to be modified, and I've hacked and modified and hacked and modified, and none of it is good enough. I am not happy with it, so we need to do something about that. First things first is I think I need to take off all of the sheathing I can take off and start having a look at where we can rectify some of the issues.
So I start removing the sheathing and sort of disconnecting all of the components. A lot of my issues actually stem from putting the dash in itself and lots of extra wires for the gauges and things like that I didn't really think of or needed to add afterwards, and that's what made everything a mess by cobbling everything together. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to go back and fix up every single wire going to that dash cluster and tidying it all up and making sense of everything so it's not just a tangled mess in there with bits cobbled in everywhere, and take everything back and start afresh.
All right, I have taken the sheathing off a lot of these wires, and I am really starting to regret my life decisions right about now. Oh, what a mess. This is going to be a headache to sort out, and I have to do it one wire at a time. But I have a bit of a plan because currently I am using a fuse box with relays in it for headlights and things like that. And this is not gonna cut it. All right, so this breakfast of dog has, it is a result of what happens when you start out with all the best intentions and then just sort of tack things on and tack things on and tack things on, and you end up with something like this. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person who's guilty of this, but this is not good enough and it won't do. Basically, there's lots of splices everywhere and lots of things that I had to add in. There's lots of sort of wires to control the dash and everything else that's all messed into this one location, and I need to make heads or tails of it. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start unpinning connectors and start untangling things. I've spent a whole bunch of time going through and making lists of what all the connectors are, what each wire is, which I should have done in the first place, but I didn't because I just joined things up, and then trying to work out what each wire does afterwards is a nightmare. So I have a map of what everything is, and I'm going to go through now and see if I can start untangling some of this stuff and start getting it to make a little bit more sense before I go to actually rewire things, because there's a big change that needs to happen, and I want to try and get rid of this fuse box completely and replace it with this Link Razor PDM. All right, so I've spent the best part of a full day now going through and tidying up some of this mess. Now, it still looks like a total dog's breakfast, but I have actually separated out. I've fixed up a lot of the dash wiring. The dash is really where I added a lot of wiring that I never thought about. Things like I didn't think through that I needed to connect an illumination circuit to the dash when I first set it up. There are lots of little things that needed a little bit more thought, and that's what I've gone through now. It's much better. I've tidied up a lot of those things. I haven't completely sheathed them in yet. That will come later, but this is looking much, much nicer. So the next thing I need to do is I need to get in and start having a look at this fuse box and see if we can delete it completely. And that's where this comes in. So this is the Link Razor PDM. So basically what this is a, it can be a replacement for a fuse box, but it's so much more than that. So basically what this does is you have connect it to the battery power and the ground, but then you can select outputs directly from the ECU. So you can wire this up via CAN and allocate the outputs to do whatever you want, which is what I'm going to use this for, to control my water pump and thermofan. So using the ECU, we'll be able to, I'll be able to set up a table in the ECU so that when the temperature gets to this, it turns the fan on. When it gets back down to this, it'll turn the fan off, and then also control the water pump. All these things are programmable via CAN, but you can also wire it up to have inputs and outputs just like a fuse box, or just basically, yeah, just straight outputs as fuses. So that is what I am planning on doing with this. I've been doing a bunch of planning to work out what I'm going to connect to what, because it's not a huge unit, so it has limited inputs and outputs. Basically, it has 4 high power outputs, or it's got 8 lower power outputs, but those low power outputs could also be inputs. So you can pick whether they're an input or an output. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. I'm going to delve into the fuse box I have set up here and then see if we can wire it in and replace half of this mess with a simpler, neater PDM. But before we go too far, let's just double check that everything in its current state still works. Let's plug it in and test it before we delve deeper.
So it's important to check the work as you go so that you're not chasing faults later. So I make sure now that all of these current modifications work, and if there's a fault in the future, it's from something I do in the future, and I'm not searching for faults back at the start.
All right, it all works. It looks like even the camera's getting a little bit foggy because it's really cold this morning, but that'll work. So now it's time to pull the gauges back out and let's dig into that fuse box.
So if you stand back, this looks like a monumental task, but to remove the fuse box, what I'm doing is I am disconnecting only one wire at a time, and I'm relabeling it with my heat shrink labels and separating it out and going through and working out what every single thing does rather than just disconnecting things randomly, and that's the way to make sure it's all nicely laid out.
All right, so we are actually getting better. So I've gone through now, and all of these are the power cables that were coming out of my current fuse box. Now, I have gone through and relabeled them all with my label maker. So heat shrink labels is a great way of labeling everything. So everything here, I'm quite clear on what everything does. So basically, I can now start wiring in my PDM.
So with all the wires labelled, I now need to make them so they can actually connect into the PDM's plug, which is with Deutsch connectors that are supplied. Some of these connections, particularly high power connections, are actually teed and go into two inputs, or two outputs I should say, out of the PDM. And this is where I'm going through and splicing each one of them and adding the end onto them, making sure they're all the right length and not tangled with anything else, and getting it all ready to connect.
It's been 3.5 days of me working on this so far, and now I have my PDM wiring mostly done. Most of this is ready to go. The last thing I have to connect is my CAN lambda. So basically these there are two inputs into the ECU that run the CAN signal, and basically you tap into it, and then instead of just sending positive or negative down the wire, you're sending messages like computer messages basically. That's my understanding of it, through the two wires, so that it can actually control many things off of just two wires, and that's the benefit of CAN. And that's how modern cars operate, because obviously there's just too many functions. You see how many wires are here, and these are all just dumb wires. So you imagine how many wires a modern car with all of the gadgets and stuff that they have in it would take to run. So that's what the CAN is all about. And from my feeble understanding, twisting them together helped interference. So I'm going to run these now, wire them into my plug. I've now joined them into the existing CAN wiring, and then we should be ready to try things out. All right, so most of this week I've spent doing splices in this car. So what is a splice? Splice is where you have to join two or more wires together. Now, there are a few different ways of doing it. If I have to do a splice midway along a wire, I will use my wire strippers. These are the ones that I like and I've been using for a while. Stick the wire in and then open it up. And so that has now exposed the wires inside. So I can do this on a wire that's already in the car, and I can then strip the end off of another piece. I like to strip about 10 mil off the end of another piece of wire. So there we go, there's 10 mil of exposed wire. And if I was going to splice this along midway, the way I do it is I wrap it around like so. Now, I don't solder wires. There are two schools of thought, and most of the ones that I see, I'm happy with crimped connections, not solder connections. They both have pros and cons. Crimps can pull out, whereas solder connections can often get brittle and break. I have never had a crimp connection fail. They all seem to hold quite well, so I'm quite happy doing that. But yeah, if I'm going to do a join on this, a splice, there are splice connections you can buy. You can buy these little splices from Raceworks, and they come in a strip of 10. What I find the most effective way to get them is I buy these boxes. They're super cheap, of these little tiny spade connectors. These things are cheap and plentiful. You buy a box of these for, I don't know, $10 or something. They're not expensive. And I cut the end off of it, so then I have a perfect little splice without actually having to buy a specific splice. Then I just sit it over the join, and I have a couple of different types of crimping pliers. These ones are really simple ones, but you can see they've got like a little double round taper, and that actually lets those sides of the crimp come up, and when you crimp it, it folds them over and tucks that into the center, bites into the wire and holds it nice and firm. That's the way I like to do it. And you can see here, the crimp has gone over. This crimp might have been slightly too small, because you can see it hasn't actually crimped on the sheath wire, but on the join, it's crimped it well. This is all nice and secure now. This is not going anywhere. Then I buy heat shrink. I buy these big lengths on eBay. This was 10 meters, much more efficient way to buy the heat shrink. And this stuff has the glue on the inside, which I like because it gives a much better, more waterproof connection. Cut off a little strip. Remember to put this on before, particularly if you've got terminals on the ends or whatever. Try and make sure you put this on before, because otherwise afterwards you can't get it on. But once you've got it there, you slide it on, and using my little crack lighter, just heat it up and shrink it onto the wire. And that is how I do a nice secure splice. And I'm quite happy with how that works. So that's how I do it. You might like soldering, I don't like soldering, and this is quicker and easier in my opinion, and more secure. And I know a lot of motorsport teams just use crimp, they don't use solder, and I'm happy with that. So that's my tip. So moving forward, I now have my dash wiring. These are all the dash wires up here. These are all separated out. That is actually good. Once they're sheathed, they'll actually look quite neat and tidy. Quite happy with that. Then I have this down here. This is now replacing my fuse box, and I am quite happy with this wiring. Now there's a couple of these wires that I don't think were actually doing anything, so I've left them spare, and I can connect them up to the PDM if I need it. I still have some more available outputs, but at the moment I've got most of the things set up. So everything that needs constant 12 volts from the battery all the time, I have wired that up via my main fuse. So this is a big heavy 40 amp fuse that sort of protects everything in the car, and then I've got my direct feed to the big heavy duty stuff. Then everything else goes through the Razor PDM, which now we have it all set up. It is time to turn the power on and see if we're cooking anything. We can start trying to program how this all works.
So the Link PDM software is reasonably intuitive. It has a lot of options, but it's relatively straightforward, just going through and setting things up, and I'm going back and then checking each circuit as I do it, and it all seems to be coming together quite nicely.
Okay, so I've spent a whole bunch of time now getting the configuration of the PDM done. So it's all through the Link software, and basically what I have is I've just wired up a bunch of wires to the PDM, and now I need to tell them what to do. So like I mentioned before, there are 4 of the high power outputs, and then there are 8 other connections that can be inputs or outputs. So what does that all mean? Basically what it means is the high power outputs can do sort of 25 amps, and the low power outputs can do about 8 amps each, but you can bridge them together to do more. And basically you can set this up as a fuse box, but also be able to do other functions. So I've labeled them all: electric water pump, thermo fan, high beam wipers and fan, the window switches and things like that. And basically I've set up a lot of them as a fuse box. So basically they're just outputs. So as soon as the ignition comes on and the PDM sees battery voltage, when it sees that it's got battery voltage, it goes, okay, I'm turning on the electric window circuit now, and now your electric windows work. Took a little bit of getting used to, but that's how it works. And then, for example, now I'm using one of the functions as an input for the high beam. So the high beam is on the output side. I'm basically using it as a relay. So it will power the high beams and through an output, and one of the inputs I've wired as the switch to switch the high beams on and off. The benefit of using this over a standard fuse box is that if a fuse trips, you don't blow a fuse. This can actually trip and then reset itself after a certain amount of time. So you can do it, get it set up to do sort of a maximum of 20 resets. So it will automatically reset itself. If something trips, it will go, oh, okay, there's a problem, turn it off, let's try again in 5 seconds if you set it to that, so that you can cool down, and it keeps the options open, and also it also gives you the chance that you can turn the key off and turn it back on again, and everything's reset and it'll try again. That way you can, if you are stuck out in the middle of nowhere, you don't have to go, oh no, I've lost all these fuses. I haven't even scratched the surface yet. I like everything, it's a learning curve and I'm trying to get my head around it, but I do have the PDM working. I do have everything connecting up. The last things that I haven't set up yet, and I'm going to have to do a little bit more research and calibrate all that stuff, is the electric water pump and the thermo fan. I haven't done that because that has to be controlled in my ECU, and then the ECU is going to talk to the PDM, and basically the ECU will tell the PDM to switch them on and off when I want them to. So that's going to take a little bit more setup, which is a little bit above my pay grade at the moment. So we'll have to leave that for next time, because I've spent 4 days on wiring, and yeah, I think I actually have crested the hill. Everything is so much neater. I do need to wrap all these wires, but they're all in nice, neat bundles that are actually ready to be rewrapped and actually be functional and not just this massive dog's breakfast of mess. So that will have to wait for next time, because I've spent all week on this and I'm out of time. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff. All right, guys, well, there's not going to be any Mrs. Jeff today. We've had a pretty crap 24 hours. Mrs. Jeff accidentally drowned my laptop that I have to try and edit these videos on last night, and that's dead, so I'm struggling with cobble together old stuff to get this video out for you guys, and we lost our 15-and-a-half-year-old golden retriever today as well, so that's quite upsetting, but the Alfarrari's getting there. Sorry that there was not more progress in this video. The wiring is just so time consuming and not very interesting to film. So we'll have more on this to come, but yeah, just wishing you guys all the best, and we'll see you on the next one. See you guys.